the overall objective today is to go through some of the updates that have recently come out and some of the updates that are about to come out. And it's been a while since we've hopped on and done one of these things, but we've got a lot of stuff that has been coming out and is coming out. I don't know if everybody is aware, but we have increased our technical staff to a large degree in order to accommodate a really large rollout we're attempting to do over the next year. And so you're probably already noticing it. There's lots of changes going into the application and even more are coming along. So my goal here today is to walk through some of those and even give you a little bit of insight as to some things that are coming down the pike. And so let's start out with some really easy ones that are in here. The first one is, you'll notice that the menu bar changed a little bit over on the left, and we simply try to clean that up and make it a little bit easier to navigate. Probably the main reason we did that is because we've got even more stuff coming out, so we were trying to clean up and make a little bit more space over there. So if you remember, all of these options up here on the top left were actual menu options, and the menu was just getting so long. This was a way to clean it up. Now, that's not the only reason we did that, but that was one of the primary reasons. And when I get into some of the different features that we've rolled out, we'll dig into those. So the next thing I want to talk about, somebody just said, am I sharing my screen? Rob, I am sharing my screen. Is that correct, or that's not? Now I'm sharing my screen.
You are now, yes.
All right. Max is supposed to yell at me when I do that. So thank you for Megan Mason for hopping on and letting me know that I am not sharing my screen. And hopefully now you are seeing my screen. So yes, the menu bar over on the left, this is what I was talking about a moment ago. We've gotten rid of a lot of menu options here, but just simply tucked them in up at the top to make it a little more condensed. All right, so let's move on to the first feature I want to talk about, which is the expungement feature that we have come out with. So let me try to open up a case. I hope I can get a case that has some people in here. But expungement is something that it got brought up a long time ago, and we finally built it into the system. And there's a reality in our worlds where sometimes a judge will come back and say, hey, that record on that person, I need you to expunge it. It needs to go away completely. You cannot keep any traces of any information on that person. And so now the system does contain an option where you can pick a person inside of a case, and now under the action menu, you can expunge it. Now, I want you to know that's only available to org admins. There's no way to allow any other groups of people to do it. It's a really limited function. We simply didn't want to open this up for a lot of people. And so it's probably rarely used to begin with. In fact, we believe not only is it rarely used, but when it is used, it should only be used by an org admin. And so that option to expunge a record is only available to an org admin. When you pick a person and do an expunge, you can put in some information, on that expungement. And then when you click OK, it's going to pop up with a really obvious warning that we are overwriting records. Now, some of you have called us before, you changed information, something happened, and we were semi-able to piece that back together and help you maybe recover some data that has been gone. I'm telling you right now, the most important thing I'll let you know about this expungement is this is for real. When we overwrite the data, we're even overwriting the historical data. That information on what was Bob Patterson or whatever his name has been overwritten with the word expunged. And not only is the current information overwritten, but if you go in and look at the history on that person, you will notice we are overwriting all of the history also. When it says it's expunged, it is expunged and there are no traces of that data. And so if one of you calls us on the phone and says, I did an actual expunge on some data and I need to get it back, we're going to be very sympathetic. We might even try to help counsel you through that moment of fear. But unfortunately, in the end, that data is gone. There is no record of it. We cannot help you get it back. So that's why we limited it to being just the org admins that can complete that function. So anyways, that is the expungement feature that is now out there. Well, let's move on to the next thing that you may have noticed, and that is now when you're dealing with a case. Okay, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to create a new case. One of the things you may now notice is that the case officer field will allow you to input multiple names. Now, in reality, you probably will not enter multiple names. I would say it's a really rare instance where multiple names are going to go into that field. But in fact, sometimes there may be multiple case officers, and now you do have the ability to enter multiple names into that field. As a matter of fact, the next update that's about to come out will also allow you to enter groups into that field. So if underneath, I believe it's under settings, under user groups, if you have created user groups in the system, you will also be able to put a group name in here instead of just multiple names. And the reason that might be important is, and a lot of this plays into the auto disposition in our software. So hopefully you're aware, if you're using auto disposition, whatever name is in that case officer field, that is where the auto disposition notification is going to go. Well, now that task that's being generated will include multiple names. And so therefore, if you've got multiple people of investigations that are working on this case, you could put in multiple names, or you may have a group that is called investigators and you want that to go in there. And that ultimately means when that task is fired off, it's going to go into whatever names or whatever groups are in that case officer field. So really all we did was extend the ability for what that field will do and how it works. My guess is a year from now, 999 out of 1,000 cases entered into our software will still contain a single name. 1 out of 1,000 will have a multiple names, or you'll have a reason for doing a group. So I'm not suggesting that's of massive importance, but the fact is it is something in there that you might want to use. Okay, so that is one of the other updates that recently came out, which is multiple names in the case officer field or groups of people. Okay, so I am not, Rob, no questions are coming in of, let me see. I did see David Bragg asked a question about the expungement and asked, can the administrator view the court order judge info? And I believe the answer to that is yes. In fact, if we go back to that case and bring up that expunged person, I believe, let me go to here, and I believe, where do we store that court order information, Rob? Am I just missing it?
That is a good question. I'm not sure if it's down there on one of the people tabs at the bottom. Maybe history. I'm not 100% sure though.
I don't remember where we put. That's a really good question, Dave. And of course, Dave would ask the question that we don't know the answer to. We're going to have to dig into that. I obviously we're asking for the judge and the court order information. I don't know why and where that is being displayed. So we're going to have to email everybody out when we're done and figure out what that answer is, and then I'll dig into that. So, all right, we'll come back to that. Any other questions that I need to, somebody said, wouldn't that be stored in the media tab like everything else? I would not suspect that that's stored in media for sure. That would be unlikely to store judge information under media. So I don't know where it's stored. We're going to have to get that answer, and we will get that answer. Okay, Rob, anything else before I continue?
Nope.
All right, great. Let's move on to another really cool update that we did in the tasking area. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is applicable to people that are using the auto dispo feature of our software. And my assumption is a lot of you are using auto dispo, but this next update that I'm going to show off is really important. If you've not already, my guess is you've already noticed this update, and that is now when you go into a task, if that task is assigned to an individual case, which any auto dispo case or any task that's auto dispo generated is generated for a single case. If the task is attached to a single case, we now display some of the case data related to the disposition. For example, the review date. It used to be probably before this update, you would go in, you would close out the task and do all of your work, but you had to go into the case, open up the case, put it into edit mode in order to change the review date. You now have the ability to manipulate the review date directly inside the task. And so, if I'm closing this task out and saying, hey, I want this thing to come up for review, let's just go a handful of months down the road, I can now enact that change from directly on this screen. I don't have to open up the case to get that done. So ultimately, it just gets rid of what is multiple different clicks in order to pull off that update to the case. However, if your task does involve multiple cases or it doesn't list a case at all, which might be a manually generated one, that information right here in the middle will not come up. I'm only seeing those two fields right there because it's a single case attached to a single task. So my assumption is you guys have already seen that. I hope that that is something that you're really happy with, because that just cuts a lot of work out when you're moving around the system. Okay. Let me move on to the next thing. I don't see any comments coming in on that. If you've got any, please post them. I'm going to get a quick drink of water and we're going to move on to the next one now. So the next update that came out, let me go ahead and bring that case up a little bit ago. We now have the ability to manipulate notes. So right now I'm entering a new note into the case. All right, so I put in that this is a test note. Prior to this update, when you put a note in, that was it. It was stuck. There was no editing it. There was no removing it. And now we have the ability to go in and say, yes, I want to update this note. Now, there are permissions that are wrapped around, who can do those things. And you do control that in permissions. I'll get into that in one moment. But the point is, I can now go in and update notes, or I can even go in and say, hey, that note right there, I want to delete that thing. And so now, because I created the note, I can delete it. But unlike the expungement where the data goes completely away, all we're doing is changing up the fact that it was an active note, now it's a deleted note. There is no deleting a note in reality. It is always going to be there. In fact, the history is going to show, you can see that this note, I entered it as the word test on February, the 2nd at 2:13 p.m., which was 2 minutes ago. Then a minute ago, I did an update and then I deleted it. So this definitely extends out your ability to add and edit and delete notes. But like everything else, it's recorded and documented for that purpose.
So when you delete a note, it takes it off of the note tab, but it still kind of stores it in the background.
Yeah, and in fact, you'll notice up here at the top, I sort of clicked it and did a sleight of hand where I didn't explain it. But you'll notice by default, when I go to the notes tab, I'm only seeing active notes. If I flip it to deleted notes, you'll see the history of all your deleted notes. Or if you do all, you'll see all active and deleted. Yep. So in reality, you're not really deleting it, even though it is going away from the screen. And I will say, unashamedly, the only thing in our software, there are now two things in our software you can actually delete and they are really gone. Number one is the expungement that I showed off. The second is the payload file for media, the actual uploaded file. The metadata about media is never deleted. In fact, that's what I would say boldly. There is no deleting, there is no hiding, there is no sleight of hand tricks in our software. If you are editing and manipulating data, we are always keeping that background, except expungement and deleting the payload file for media. That's it. Nothing else is really gone. Okay. All right. let's get into the next update. And if you do the, so let's do this. We're going to go to the scan page up here at the top. And so the scan page has now become its own little button up there. And so one of the things you might have known is that we did a lot of updates to this page and we got rid of a lot of buttons. All right. Now we didn't get rid of any functionality. The functionality is all there. We just ran out some updates that prevent you from having to click the different buttons to select the type of scan you're about to do. So for example, there used to be by default when you scanned an item barcode, it would look at all the item barcodes in the system to bring it up. If you happen to scan an item storage location, you had to first click a button that says, hey, I'm scanning a storage location, because if you didn't do that and you scanned it under the item scan, it would just simply come back and tell you, hey, it's an invalid barcode. That's because you were in the item scan area and you were scanning a location barcode. And then there was a third type of thing that you could scan, which is a serial number on an item. Well, now we've got it to where you simply scan whatever it is, and it's going to do a lookup for in all those different areas. So if it happens to be a serial number for an item, it will display it on the screen. You don't have to click a different radio button to get to it. So, one thing that I would largely say, we are always looking to get rid of buttons and clicks and things that take a lot of movement. That's a goal of ours, but we try not to remove functionality. So in this case, nothing went away except your need to click on these different things. And now it's simply going to pick it up no matter what it is. And oh, by the way, there's a fourth kind of thing that you can scan, which is a container. So a lot of people don't use containers in our software, but if you know what containers are and you know what they do, then you are familiar with scanning containers. And so if in that scan area you scan a container, it will automatically recognize, it's a container, and then it will drop that container on the screen down at the bottom. Okay, so again, the update that I'm describing here is we just got rid of a bunch of clicks and we made it far more simplistic to operate with it.
And if you scan a container's barcode, if you flip to that containers tab, there are going to be all of the containers that you scanned shown below in a list. And if you want to view the items in the container, I believe there's a view items box you can click on. Yep. And that will bring all the items up.
Yep. I'm just curious, is there anybody listening right now that actually does containers within our software? We've only got a handful of clients that are doing containers, and so I don't feel, so there you go. First person, David jumped in. So David is using containers, and David, I don't know if you know it or not, but one of the updates that recently came out now is you can move containers around the system now from this scan page. Okay, so actually multiple people are using containers. So that's something to keep in mind. Was we got rid of an option under tools that had to do with moving containers around, and I don't even know if you guys
thank
knew
you
that
all
existed,
for joining me today.
If I were you, what I would do is,
looks like we got finished a little bit earlier than I expected. It was a fairly short webinar today. So once again, I thank you all for joining. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving coming up, and
because that's really important functionality
eat lots of turkey
in our software.
and pass out on
I'm not going to elaborate a lot here.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining the webinar, and hopefully you'll be with us again next time.
And see what it does.
Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to leave that at that. All right, let's move into what is quite possibly the largest update that we came out with in version 100. So right now we are on version 100. That's the last one that came out. We are getting ready next week, 1 week from today, if it still happens, and it's scheduled. We're going to release version 101 next week. Maybe this is a good time to throw this out. If you are not familiar with our wiki guide, and I cannot imagine anybody on here is not familiar with that. We are always talking about the wiki guide. But if somehow you are unaware of it, inside of the, let me see here. Can I post this? Hold on 1 second. I'm going to post, maybe. Rob, can you put the link to the wiki guide inside that question window and post it out to everybody. I don't know why I can't do that. So hopefully you can, Rob. Put a link to the wiki guide inside that question window and send it out to everybody. But the wiki guide is where we post everything about all of our product and things you need to know. There is a section down toward the bottom titled System Updates. Okay, and so this is where you can go and look at everything that has come out in previous versions of the system. And Rob does a phenomenal job with keeping up with this wiki guide. My guess is most of you do not spend a lot of time looking through it or looking at the updates. And so that's why we do webinars like this, so that we can start to dig into some of the things that have recently come out. But definitely take a look at version 100, and we are very soon going to be posting version 101. Rob is doing all the updates to that, and so that'll be coming out. So
And I just that, that version 101 is going to be out approximately in the middle of the month, around the 16th.
Okay, so it's been pushed back from the 9th also, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, I did not know that. So keep an eye out for version 101 coming out, and that'll be good. Rob, it seems like you didn't figure out how to post a question either. Why are we not able to do that?
I just tried to. I thought I posted it to the group, but apparently not.
Yeah, I don't know why that is not working. Oh, Christy said she got it. Okay, well, I don't know. Hopefully everybody got a link to the wiki guide. If not, I will tell you, when you log into the software, down here at the bottom under help is a link to the wiki support guide. So you should always know that's how you get to the wiki support guide. All right. The last thing I want to talk about in the version 100 that came out is tagging. Okay. Tagging is a really, really important feature to our system. If you use it, you know how important it is. If you do not use tagging, then you don't know what you're missing out on. Tagging is unbelievably important, and it's about to become even more important in our software. We are this update version 100. In fact, one of the main updates is the fact that we put tagging on the main menu now. It is so important to where we're going. We've now got a link right here on the menu bar at the top that takes you into tagging. So don't know if you know it or not, but when you go into tagging, if you're now, you know what, actually, I'm gonna take a step back. Something that's really important to toss out are permissions within tagging. Okay, so let me take a left turn just a little bit, and let's first of all talk about who has access to tags and what permissions is that going to give it to them. Because what I will say is, while tags are really important to our software, I would submit to you, generally the org admins and higher elevated people are the ones that are using it. Generally, we do not see the officers using tagging because they generally don't do it right anyways. So some of you may have, I would be curious, anybody listening, if your officers or your general users are using tagging, I'd be interested to know if you wouldn't mind posting something in there to tell me, how's that work out for you? Does it work out? It would just be interesting if anybody said, yep, I definitely have my officers using tagging. So there may be a use case out there, but the thing I want to point out is when you go into permission groups and then you click on permissions, and hopefully this is something you're familiar with, because permissions are wildly important. I mean, this controls who can do what inside the software. You'll notice now under tagging down at the bottom, we've extended these permissions out, all right, to a really large degree. So for example, like organizational tags, this allows you to control who can even see what is an org tag. Now, that's another update. We now have org tags, we have group tags, and we have private tags. So I'll get into all three of those in just a minute, but keep in mind, org tags, everybody has access to them. Group tags, only people inside the group have access to those tags. And then the third one is a private tag. It's just my own tag. My guess is most of you aren't going to use private tags, because typically the purpose of a tag is to indicate to somebody else this is what's going on with this item, or this tag has relevance. Generally, you're not going to have just a private tag that nobody else is going to see, but they do exist now. So org tags, group tags, private tags. So the first permission here is, can the person that's in this permission group, can they see the org tag? All right, so by enabling that option right there, they're going to be able to see the tag at all. Now keep in mind, the ability to create an org tag is separate. So I would suggest for many of you, you may have this enabled right there, view an org tag. I want everybody in the software to view it, but I don't want everybody able to be able to create org tags. So I may leave that box unchecked right there. And then there's another option over on the right as to who can attach or detach a tag. So keep in mind, there's a difference, a create organizational tag. This option right here, that allows them to create an actual tag, to name it. That is generally going to be really privileged access right there. You don't want everybody in creating tags, okay? Yes, I want everybody to be able to view tags. I might even suggest I want everybody to be able to attach or detach a tag, but I don't want them creating these things on the fly. So the combination of all those checkboxes are really important as to how those org tags will roll out. And then right below this are the options for creating group tags and creating personal tags. As I said a little bit ago, I would imagine for most of you, you will not have that box checked right there. You don't have a need for personal tags. If you are not allowing your users to use org tags, you're sure as heck not going to allow them to use personal tags. So whether you turn those on or not, if there's a need for it, I don't know. But when we built that out, that's something we did add there so that you did have the ability to do it. I would imagine the group tags would be a little bit more used. A group tag might be something like, I've got people that work in the evidence room. We're a part of a group in the system, and we want to be able to use some tags, but I don't want other people in the evidence room to use them. And that may really only be applicable to really large organizations. I mean, keep in mind, we've got some organizations that have 10 and 20 people working in the evidence room. So you may have a group inside the room that's doing something and you want them to apply their own tags and nobody else to see them. My guess is if you're a small evidence room, you're not going to use personal tags, you're not going to use group tags. You may or may not use organizational tags to a larger extent. Now, one thing I didn't really cover is what the heck is a tag. I have to assume you know what a tag is. If you don't know what a tag is and you're really interested, you're going to have to go back to the wiki guide, read a little bit about tagging, you know, what are they, how do you turn them on, and how do you begin to use them. I'm definitely speaking to people that I think are going to have a little bit more of a knowledge as to what a tag is to begin with. Okay, so those are the permissions that are wrapped around with tagging, all right? And so now you'll notice when we go to the tag page, this has been updated quite a bit now. And you'll notice up here at the top, this is where you can drill down and see the different types of tags that you may be using inside the software. So, you know, if I've got group tags, I can go to the group there and see tags related to the group. As you can see in my specific case, I only have organizational tags. And so right now, my organization, I've got 196 different tags that have been created and are in use. Okay. So, you know, from this page, you can go in and drill down to them. And again, I would suggest to you that by having the tags now on the main screen, it is, as long as you have tags enabled in your system, you won't see that tagging option if you don't have any permissions turned on. I believe I'm right in saying that. Rob, do you have any idea if that statement I just made is true? If nobody has tagging turned on, do I see the tags?
I am not 100% sure. I believe you do.
All right. I would say if you don't have any permissions turned on for tagging, you're not going to see that tags option at all. So if you don't see that button right there at the top left-hand corner, it's because you have no permissions turned on for tagging. I believe I'm seeing it because I'm a system admin, so which is totally different. If you don't see the tags, go into settings, permission groups, turn them on. Or you know what I think, Rob? Let me test this out real quick. I'm going to go to settings organization, and then I'm going to go to the field settings right here. And I believe that is what controls tagging right there. So if I'm going to put myself on the spot, I'm going to log out and log back in, and we're going to see if that goes away. All right, that did not. So, all right, what I'm saying is wrong then, and you can strike all of that from the record. I don't know exactly what would turn that thing off. I would have to think something turns that off, but nonetheless, we'll keep moving along. So at this point now, again, the main update is that you have a link to the tags from the main page, and you've got the different types of tags that are inside of here. And I don't know if you guys know it or not, but it also does these record counts for these tags inside of here. So when you go to the tags page, I can see that this particular tag right here has 96 items related to that, and I can click on the tag, excuse me, or the number, and it'll bring up those items, those 96 items in an item list. So nonetheless, that's how you can begin to move around with tags a little bit more. I still would suggest that most people are using tagging, especially when it comes to disposition stuff, moving things around the system, doing searches based on tags. I mean, there's a lot of relevant use for doing tagging inside the system. And I do want to take a minute and breathe. We're getting a little close to the end of our time, but I sort of glanced over tagging. While we're here talking about tagging, is there anything anybody would like to get into? Any questions you've always wondered? Anything you want to dig into with tagging? I see that Megan posted that her investigators use tagging, but they're only allowed to use certain ones. And yes, I would agree. Tagging is there, but it's certainly limited use for sure. Now, one of the things I'm not going to dig into today, but one of the updates that is getting ready to come out that we're going to dig into in a later webinar is workflow that will assign or detach a tag. So the workflow is getting a major overhaul in our system, and in an upcoming webinar, we're going to dig into workflow. There are some really cool things coming out with workflow. And workflow is simply an automated function within the system based on something happening. So an item is entered, an item is updated, a transaction occurs, a transaction against currency has occurred, and I want to send out an email or a text message or attach a tag. There are some really awesome things coming out with workflow, but I don't want to dig into that today. All right. Let me see. I'm looking at my list. I'm not seeing anybody ask any questions on tagging, so I assume that everybody is good with that.
One question.
Right.
Do you have the ability to restrict tags? For example, only for a case, or only for an item, or only for items in a certain category?
So, well, the answer to that, I believe, is what you're indicating is no, there's not. I mean, tagging, certainly you can control who has access to tags and what tags they can use, but there's no control mechanism on when can a tag be used, like to a specific type of item. Oh, I see, that's a question. I was like, where did you come up with that question? I was like, wow, that was a really odd question for you to think up, Rob, but somebody else came up with that. And so the answer is no, there is no way to say if it's a currency item or a drug item, only be able to use these tags. You can only control who has access to tags via, a group or an organizational tag, like what I showed off. So the answer is, Justin, no, there is no way to restrict it based on type of item. However, when you do get into the workflow, which is, again, which we'll talk about in a later webinar, you will then be able, via workflow, to control which tags are applied or detached based on the type of item being dealt with. But that's an automated trigger via workflow. It's not a manual one being applied. So there's nothing in the user interface that would say, if this is a currency item, allow the person to put this tag on or not. Only via that workflow would that be able to be done. And now I will say, Justin, what may be cool about that is if you're relying on manual application of tagging right now, like you're expecting a trained user to go in and apply or detach a tag, with the workflow stuff coming out, you may actually be able to be opened up to where it's more automated, you need less user interaction, and then therefore you may be able to get the result you're looking for because you can have those tags applied or removed based on different factors, not a human knowing what it is. I hope that made sense, Justin. Okay. I've got probably 8 minutes left. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing anything else pop up in here. All right. A couple more things I'm going to go over. And this is in the next version coming out. So right now, there's no way for you to play with this. I just want you to know it does exist. And you're going to need to go into the wiki guide when it comes out, and you're going to need to play around with some of those things. First thing, okay, let me get to this one, and this is some cleanup stuff. So let me go back to the existing system. When you go into settings organization, notice how all these different tabs exist up at the top. It's gotten really big. There's too many options up here. The next update that comes out, we are cleaning up. I'm sorry, Rob had it on the main page here. 1 second, under admin settings right here. So with the next update, here's what the settings organization tab is going to look like. We're tucking in a lot of options under parent headers. So nothing goes away. All we're doing is cleaning up the way that looks on there. So just be aware when the new version comes out, and if you go to settings organization, we didn't get rid of anything. We simply cleaned it up and tucked things up underneath there. So that is a fairly minor update. One of the next big ones under settings permission groups. All right, you're going to notice, and this is an important one. I just want to throw this out to everybody. I actually don't even see it on here. No, it is here. All of these if owner options. So we're extending out permissions now to where you have more control over who can see what information. So for example, in today's version of the software, under cases, all you can say is, yes, somebody can view it, they can create it or update it. We now have the option coming out where you can set that they can only view it if they are the owner of the case. And so what that'll allow you to do is you might actually extend out update permissions to a case because now they can only update it if they're the owner. So before, you may have said, I don't want people updating cases or even items. Maybe I don't want them to update items. And now you'll have the option to extend some of this stuff out to say if they're the owner of that. So keep that in mind. And I believe there's some other options coming out for if owner things, but it's by default, it's going to give everybody access to everything, but you will have the option of going in and beginning to limit some of that stuff down as to who can see what. I don't know how big a deal that's going to be. We've got some clients that bring that up and say, hey, I've got cases in the system, but I only wanted to see their cases they've created, and that's how you're going to be able to extend that out. Keep in mind, your org admins are always going to be able to see everything. There is no way to restrict them at all. Okay, so that's one of the updates coming out. I've got a whole slew of smaller updates that are coming out. Let me pick one here. Here's one of the big ones. Let me see if I can get a case that has some media in it. Yeah, oh, this is a wow, perfect one. All right, so we have an update coming out now that is going to allow you to share out media for people that are not in the system. So right now, today, prior to this update, in fact, these are bad. We don't want to share out media that's been deleted. Let's share out some active media. All right, so here's a firearm piece of media right here. It's I don't even know what the heck this file is, but it does not matter. In today's world, you have to allow somebody to log into the software to see it. This update that is coming out will now allow you to share out this piece of media with users that are not logging into the software. That's a huge update. This may be people at your court, you know, or just again, or people outside the software, and you can now go in and say, hey, I want to share out this individual piece of media or multiple pieces of media with that user right there. And so when you hit, when I hit add emails here, it's going to send an email out to that user saying this file has been shared with you. And so what it'll require is when they get that email, it'll run them through a process where they're going to go to the software to get access to that media. We do now record under details of that media. We do now record that that share was made. Because you got to keep in mind, they're not logging into our software to get to that media. And so we built up a little bit of a process to ensure that the user you intend to get the media is the only one that has access to it. So when they get that email, it'll say media has been shared with you. They'll go to a screen where it will say, hey, we're going to send you an email out with a code. You need to put the code on the screen. That way we have verified that the user that's requesting the file is the one actually getting it. And then when they put that code in, they will actually have access to that file. And then we will record that that user did get access to the file. The only way you can manipulate that. So one of the concerns that we had, there's another really large system out there for body cams and tasers that you guys all know about, really, really big company. They do not restrict sending that email out to people. So in reality, I could send it to the DA's office and they could forward it to 8 other people, and I would never know the 8 other people that downloaded that file. With our system, we set up that additional parameter that when you get an email with the shared link, you then have to go into the software and put a code in to actually get access to that software. And the only way you're going to get that code is to get it via email. So is it perfect and there's no way anybody can circumvent it? I would not suggest that, but I would say it's way more difficult to circumvent it than just forwarding the email off to somebody and saying, hey, here is that thing. So now Justin asked the question, is that access perpetual? And the answer is no, it's not. As a matter of fact, under settings organization, there is now an option, I believe it's going to be, yes, under shared media settings, you can put how long that'll stay active. And so, you know, I could say, hey, when that email goes out, I'm going to give them 7 days. And so after 7 days, that link is no longer going to work. And so if I save that, now I can do that. And I believe, let me go back to that case. I believe you can actually go in now. Sorry, now I got to think. I got to find out where. Forgot what I went to get to that. Oh, here we go. Hold on here. There's the firearm. So I believe now under details of that firearm, and I forget somewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let's go to tools. Rob, do you know offhand where do we see the links for that shared media? I thought I had an option for, here it is. I'm sorry. Under settings, shared media, you can go in and see out every shared link you've ever sent out and when does it expire. So let's say that one I just sent out, I was like, oh crap, that went to the wrong person. I can now go in and say, hey, I want to edit that shared link out. I can change who it was sent to, or most likely you're just going to delete it and say, hey, I want that thing to go away. Now I've deleted out the shared link. And if that person were to try to come back and access it, it's not going to be available to them. So it will automatically expire based on that setting under settings organization, but then under settings shared media, you can control anything you've ever sent out. Okay, so Justin, hopefully that answered your question.
So it looks like Morgan asked a question: if we're sharing media with non-safe users, what software are they entering to view the shared media?
So that's a very good question. They will go to this site. They just won't have to log in. You do not have to create a username and password for them to access it. But when they get that email, it'll have a link that brings them back to our software, and it'll automatically bring up on this. In fact, here, let me do this. Let's just show you what that looks like, because this is really important. So let me switch here to this email, because this is the one I sent it out on. Come on. There we go. All right, so let me see. I did send that out to Ben Townsend 13. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yep. Let me look and see if it went into my spam. I don't know where that email is at, but I should have one. So the answer is, Morgan, is that the user will get an email with a link. That link will take them back to the login screen in order to get that code. They do not have to log into the software. They simply have to put their email in, they'll get a code, and that's how they're going to move through. So did that answer your question, Morgan? Or for everybody else? That's a good one. Okay, very good. That answered the question. All right. So again, the big main use right there is now you can share out media with people that do not have a login to the software. And oh, by the way, it does not use one of your concurrent licenses to have them hit the site in that way. I don't think that's the best way to do it. I would still recommend that your people log into the software, but if you're in a situation where that cannot happen, this is a really good secondary option to get around that. Okay. So I do have some other things I wanted to go over, but we're at the 50-minute mark right now, and I would suggest I'll have to talk with Rob. I don't know when our next webinar is coming out, but I would imagine we're going to want to do another one of these in a couple of weeks, maybe when that update does come out, and we'll go through some of the other options that are in there. There's just so many things to go over. It could take me an hour and a half to get through all of them. And unfortunately, we're out of time for today. So I do have another minute. Is there any last minute questions you want to dig into? Okay. Well, everyone, thank you so much for showing up to the webinar today. I hope there were some good things in here for you. Please check out the wiki guide with those updates that are coming out. We'll be sending out emails with all of that stuff. And as always, if we can help you with anything, please reach out to us and let us know. So, Rob, you got anything else you want to toss out before we roll?
Nope, that's it. I hope everyone stays safe. I know a lot of us are going to be getting some snow, sleet, ice, and rain here very soon if you're not already experiencing that. And thank you for attending today's webinar.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ben.